Hello and welcome to Horror Movie Talk Special, The Haunting of Hill House Aftershow. On a normal episode, we would review and discuss one horror film in detail. For this series of 10 or more episodes, depending if we want to do a summary episode, we will have a opinionated and accidentally funny discussion on each episode of The Haunting of Hill House, one of our absolute favorite series on Netflix. Your expert hosts each week are Dr. Bryce Hansen, that's me, I hold a PhD in spookology, and Professor David Day, the foremost expert in scare no-nos. So with no further ado, The Haunting of Hill House Aftershow with Horror Movie Talk. We got a great show. We're going to start out strong. We'll start out by giving a brief synopsis of the episode, and then we'll get into spoilers and take a deeper dive into what we liked and hated about the episode. Today, we're going to talk about episode 1, called Steven Sees a Ghost, which is the lamest possible title for an episode.
Steven Sees a Ghost!
Who is a spooky fright?
Oh. Hey, Steven, can you tell us about the ghost that you saw? Well, I saw it and I was afraid. Back to you in the studio.
What's it like out there in the woods? Well, it's no inside, but
well, let's go back inside.
So yeah, in this first episode of the series, we're introduced to the Crane family, both past and present. First, we're shown the young Crane family being awoken by the young Nell, played by little Violet McGraw, who apparently had seen the bent neck lady.
Yeah, the bent neck lady, yeah. That's exactly what a little kid would call a ghost.
Yeah.
They would call it by the way it appears to them.
Right. Her father, Hugh Crane, the young Hugh Crane, is played by Henry Thomas, which you might recognize from E.T. No.
Well, he was Elliot.
Yeah,
in E.T.
And he explains to Nell how her dreams spilled over and that she was just imagining seeing the scary lady. Jumping forward to present-ish day, where we see all the children now as adults with adult problems and an extreme amount of baggage in relation to the Hill House. Something terrible happened in the past that led the family to flee from the house, and now in the present it seems that house is calling back to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, the first episode really establishes that this house is a strong presence, and you know something is very wrong, and something went very wrong there, and we're given no clues as to what is happening. Barely see any actual, ghosts.
Boy.
We don't really see the bent neck lady very much in this episode.
A little bit.
But yeah, it's a fantastic episode. I think this is my the second time watching this series.
This is my second time watching it as well. We should mention we were lucky enough to have early access to the Bly Manor series, and we did a series of afterpods, or I should say aftershows about Bly Manor upon its release, and it did so well, and so many people liked it, and that they asked for us to do a series of aftershows for The Haunting of Hill House, which to me I liked Hill House even more than I liked Bly Manor, so I was obliged to do it because I do not mind going back to this series.
Yeah, as I've gotten some space from Bly Manor, while I still think that it's the same quality of show, Hill House is definitely better.
Yes,
a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. And this is what I was saying, and I thought you might have forgotten a little bit how hard Hill House goes. It goes hard.
Yeah, I mean it's also just a much more compelling story.
Yes.
To where it's there is kind of the same kind of past, present kind of thing happening, and a lot of crossover things and stories weaving together. But in essence, Bly Manor is about the not the taming of the shrew, the turn of the screw.
The turn of the screw, yeah.
And it's basically just an au pair. I got criticized on our voicemail. An au pair watching after these orphan children, and scary stuff happens, which is just not super compelling compared to an entire family experiencing different hauntings.
Elements of terror.
And terror in their shared house, and then as adults, like reliving it or recounting it.
Well, but also, I mean, and they're very similar in their approach to character building. They're both very character centric, but Bly Manor is much more tame. It's much more somber and sad.
Yeah.
Whereas Hill House is much scarier, and but they both are very good at this element of making you empathetic with this person, seeing why they are the way they are, even if they're a reprehensible human being.
Yeah,
they're not beyond you feeling bad for them at some point.
Right.
Once you understand their story, which is brilliant of Mike Flanagan. It's a testament to his ability and his intent to kind of describe everyone as having their own backstory, and you should probably consider, whenever you run into someone who you find reprehensible, what is it that made them this way? Because they were once just like you, just innocent, and they had bad things happen to them. And that's one of the things that I liked about your little quick synopsis here. You say, jumping forward, we see all the children now as adults with adult problems and an extreme amount of baggage in relation to the Hill House. And this is what I like about both of these series is, and this because I spend so much time thinking about this, which is what made me the way I am. How is the thing that I'm doing now for my daughters going to affect who they become?
Right.
For people who I find it hard to empathize with, like my dad, why is he the way he is? It's a sad story.
Yeah.
It's a sad story, and these make it easier for me to deal with the world.
Yeah.
Because it makes me more thoughtful.
Yeah. So before we get into spoilers, let's just take a minute to plug ourselves a little bit. If you're new to Horror Movie Talk, you should check out our website, horrormovietalk.com. There you'll find links to all our social media. Go find our Facebook group. It's very active and very fun. Lots of friendly people there that are huge horror fans. We post new episodes of our regular podcast every Wednesday, where we review one horror movie. We usually try to review every new release, but, as you can imagine, right now during COVID shutdowns, there's not a lot of new releases.
Speaking of which, we got to do The Craft. I think there's a new Craft coming out.
Yeah. And if you want to leave us a voicemail, call our number 682-253-4468 and let us know how we're doing, if you like or hate the show. Yeah, don't leave us a 1-star review. Just call us and yell at us directly.
Yeah, put your money where your mouth is. Show up on the show, and we'll take your criticism and we'll play it for everyone to hear. And if you do like the show, consider becoming a patron on Patreon.com. That's the best way to support the show. Patreon.com/Horror Movie Talk, and there's all kinds of bonus content on there for a year and a half worth of bonus content on there. So check that out. Yeah. So thanks again for listening.
So let's get into spoilers and talk more details about this episode. Spoilers. Okay, so spoiler alert. We're just going to be talking about everything in the episode. But this is a, 3-year-old show on Netflix, so it's really, your fault if you're listening right now. So yeah, I don't have a ton of specific points to talk about, just more generally going through impressions on the episode, because there's not a lot in this episode other than setup, but it really establishes the framework with which this story is going to be told, mainly that it's going to be told in the past when the family is much younger, and the kids, probably the oldest is 11, 12.
Yeah.
Steven is the oldest, and that's, what the episode is titled after. And then goes down to probably
Steven's a go.
4 or 5. And then it shows the present day, and all the kids are grown up and the dad is grown up, and the mom is not grown up. So something happened there. But really, this reminded me how good of a device this is, because
this is very useful.
This is what happens in It, and like other
Stephen King's It, the adaptation onto the screen, or both the book and the screen adaptation.
Right. There's what are some other movies or shows that do this, where they do past and present?
Memento.
Anyways, it's just really compelling to see like childhood and then what the adults are now.
Benjamin Button.
All right.
Childhood.
So yeah, it's very effective, and it's a really cool way to frame this, because you see the effects of childhood trauma, basically.
Yeah.
And how it's different for everyone.
Oh, it's uncanny. It's interesting that they have all these kids, that this family is comprised of all these kids. How many? I think it's 5 kids. There's 2 boys and 3 girls. There's the youngest girl. Who is the ghost in this episode.
So there's
who's played by
Steven. There's Shirley, Luke, Theodora, and Nell.
Yeah, Nell is played by the same young lady who plays Danny, the au pair, in Bly Manor.
Yeah. I didn't realize. There's some people in this. I'm like,
yeah, me too.
I didn't realize Danny was Nell in this.
Yeah, Henry Thomas is obvious.
Yeah, but even then, it's pretty hard because they look so different between the two shows.
Yes, well, they use contacts on him in this show, I think, or they might use contacts on him. No, He does have naturally brown eyes, and they put blue eyes on him in this, so it makes him look real stark. Huh. And then the middle girl, the lesbian, is the lady in the lake.
Yeah, Kate Siegel.
Yeah, Kate Siegel, who is the lesbian in Hill House, is the lady in the lake in Bly Manor. Mm-hmm. Spoilers. There are going to be plenty of spoilers throughout this series of aftershows for The Haunting of Bly Manor. So, just FYI,
be prepared.
But anyway, so. Lots of Mike Flanagan is a director and producer writer that seems to like Steven Spielberg or Quentin Tarantino have a stable of reliable actors and actresses who he prefers to give work to and work with.
Yeah. I mean, especially this is more of an anthology show where it's between the two shows, it uses at least 50% of the cast.
Yeah, and then, but more to my point, I mean, the mother in Hill House is used in another Mike Flanagan movie, one of my favorites, Gerald's Game. Uh-huh. She's the main actress there.
And Kate Siegel is also in Hush, which is directed by Flanagan.
Oh, is she the main actress in Hush?
Uh-huh.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, and she also wrote it.
All of them are so beautiful. Like all the people cast in this show are...
Yeah, that's one of the things, like, all of these people, they look like they could be family, and the older versions and the younger versions are really close.
The casting is unbelievable.
Because they're all fantastic actors, the children and the adults.
And they look
exactly
dead on.
Yeah.
Specifically, I'm thinking of, and I'm sure you are as well, the oldest daughter is cast... And her younger counterpart. Look, I mean, I didn't do any research into this, but it would not surprise me at all if they're mother and daughter.
Right. So
I'm going to look this up
now. So that is Shirley, right? Young Shirley is Lulu Wilson. Old Shirley is Elizabeth Reeser. So no,
I can't believe they're not related.
Like even the ones where it's like a weird looking awkward kid growing up into
uniquely different, awkward,
like kind of a beautiful man, like that's
the younger brother who then becomes an addict.
Luke was it Luke Crane, who was also in the actor that plays old Luke Crane was Peter in Bly Manor. Yeah,
this is one of, like Bly Manor, like all Mike Flanagan productions, it seems like just the casting is off the charts good.
Yeah.
Off the charts good.
So anyways, it goes back and forth, and really the story in the past that we find out is, one, it just sets up that the kids are starting to see things, and it appears like the dad doesn't believe or is just trying to comfort them and say, like, it's okay, it's not real, it's all in your head, you know, or in a spooky house, like you're just dreaming.
Yeah, and the premise here is this family bought this big palatial estate to fix it up and then sell, because this is what they do. This is how they make their money. They flip houses.
Right. And I don't even think did they mention that?
Yeah.
In this episode? I don't remember that being mentioned.
So the little boy and the little girl at night, at the start of the episode, are talking to their dad, and he's explaining dreams to them, and they're like, when can we leave this house? And he's like, your mom and I are going to fix it up, and then we have to put it on the market, and then somebody has to buy it, and then we'll move, just like last time, and just like we're going to do again.
Right. So, they, it also establishes that it's a very rational family. Right. Like, it talks about, the housekeeper is starting to try to indoctrinate one of the children about Christianity, and that there's real Stephen. Darkness, in the world, and that Jesus is the light. And then Carla,
the mom,
Gugino, Olivia Crane, the mother, comes in and basically explains, like,
dresses her down, kind of.
Yeah, just like, we don't really indoctrinate our kids about any one thing. They're well educated in all world religions, and that he's
the Torah.
He's familiar with the Bible and the Torah and the Talmud and the Quran and all this stuff. And so it establishes that these are not crazy people.
Well, that's a certain variety of crazy in my book.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like if you, this is the thing, like,
I'm always suspect of people that put too much effort into their children.
No, that's not at all what you're twisting my words.
No, I'm saying that's me.
Oh,
like,
shut up.
They'll be okay. Like,
look. Here's what I'm talking about.
I do a little too much time.
I do think this is worth talking about. So I grew up Christian. I was very much, indoctrinated.
Right.
They put me in a Christian school.
Right.
I went to church every fucking Sunday. The whole thing. I memorized Bible verses for the first part of my life. Mm-hmm. Literally. Just memorize. And so, at some point in my life, I became an atheist, and my dad said, "What are you doing? We wasted so much money on your Christian education," which actually I'm very thankful for, because I do feel like I got a little bit of a leg up in terms of the private education. But now, you'd think I'd be a little bit more militant with my own kids, but frankly, I hope a lot of people come and approach them with their religions, and it doesn't bother me, and I would never. So if my daughter's preschool teacher is like, Jesus loves you and he loves me and God watches over us, I don't go, actually, we educate our daughter on all the different religions.
Actually, religion is a poison spread on the earth, and it's the worst possible thing that humans have ever done in history.
Right. Because that in and of itself indicates that you're not terribly steadfast in your belief that, it's like that's a reactionary little shit thing for you to do.
Yeah.
It's like, well, actually, there's also the Talmud. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, bitch.
And it's also just like a reaction of, like, I am so salty and angry that everyone's not like me.
Right. It's like, and it's also a knee-jerk reaction of being like, protecting your kid, like, remember all this other stuff I taught you, not just allowing them to remember it on their own and internalize it. It's almost as if you don't believe your own words, kind of. It's just like, well,
yeah.
If my daughter asks me about God, I'll tell her what I know about God.
You're right,
because it's just like, whatever.
So, anyways, they establish this family as, like, very intelligent and seemingly rational and all that. And even when it jumps forward to the present day, it seems like they're all pretty level-headed in terms of, like, what would you call it? Just
trying to be rational thinkers.
Yeah, rational thinkers.
Yeah. Probably actually they're overcompensating
Right.
towards the rational to try and...
Yeah, a little bit. So anyways, so that's like what they set up in the past. And then also it shows the family just running away from the house and escaping in a midnight escape from this house, and their mother is not with them. And so there's kind of a question of like, what happened there? And in the present day, it's made pretty clear that their dad really never talked to them about what happened that night.
Right.
Even in adulthood. Like, they don't talk about it. And what they do know about that night, they learn from tabloids.
Yeah.
Because tabloids were very interested in what happened at Hill House. We know that the mother died or committed suicide or was killed. One of those. And
we don't know exactly what happened, but we know something bad happened.
Right. And so in the present day, it's basically all the children living pretty damaged lives in different ways.
Yeah.
The two older children, so Stephen and Shirley, are kind of the real stable
Older.
Yeah. Kids.
Well-established jobs.
Yeah, Shirley's like a mortuary person, mortician.
Yeah, mortician. Yeah.
And Stephen is an acclaimed author.
Yeah.
That had his breakout hit writing about his own experiences in Hill House.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the kids seem to not be on as stable footing. There's Theodora, which is living with Shirley in an adjoining house, and she's the lesbian. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That
why would you say it like that?
That seems to be living kind of on the edge, just really about having a good time and not forming attachments. And she's got a weird thing with gloves. And
with gloves.
And then everyone starts getting calls from their sister Nell, who we saw as a young girl in the beginning, and everyone basically sends her to voicemail. And
poor girl. She's in such trouble.
Yeah, and we're basically told that she's kind of like the Nell that cried wolf. Like, she's always gotten into some kind of trouble or sounding the alarm, and everything's an emergency. Even when she was a little kid, it shows her like saying it's an emergency. And so they eventually kind of call her back, and the dad calls her back, and something's not right.
Yeah, she says to the dad, she says the bent neck lady's back.
Right. And
he is alarmed.
Right.
Like, he's across the country or something, and he's like, fuck.
Yeah.
We got to get moving.
So something's happening there. And that's basically the setup for the episode. What is set up for the framework of the whole show.
Right.
Is set up in this episode. Specifically, like, the things that are revealed in this are that there's a bent neck lady. We see her a couple times, catch glimpses.
Dude, the way this thing plays with the background, the background shots of things like moving around and shit.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Now that this is the second time I watched it, you learn, from just the internet that there's a lot of like hidden ghosts, like kind of like a Where's Waldo. This is kind of also a Where's Waldo for ghosts.
Yeah.
Because in the background, just keep your eye open. There's going to be a bunch of like people in kind of like white shrouds or kind of like amorphous, ghostly people.
Yeah.
That aren't there when it shoots closer or whatever. And so just keep your eyes open. And it's not something that you notice first off when you're watching it, but you do get a sense of like something. You're uneasy because I think your subconscious sees like shapes of people that are standing around. So the bent neck lady, probably one of the best early on scares is you're shown Nell when she's younger trying to sleep out in like the foyer or something because she's scared of the bent neck lady in her room.
It's pronounced foyer.
And she's lying down on the couch and she opens her eyes and you just see this terrified look on her face.
Yeah.
Which is super effective.
Yeah.
And it pans back and shows this, dark-haired lady hovering over the top of her. And it's frightening.
I gotta say, like, just remembering back to my first watching of this show, this is I'm gonna sound like a broken record here on the rest of these episodes. This is such a chillingly scary show. It's so good at freaking me out setting the ambiance.
Yeah, it's got such a great atmosphere too. Yeah. It's like they start from the very beginning because it's like a monologue talking about the Hill House, which is, we find out, is an excerpt from Stephen's book, which is, I should have copy pasted it, but just talking about the stones and the history of this house and how everyone's alone there and kind of stuff. And so it's like really setting this dark mood. And then it has these little vignettes throughout the series, but it starts early with episode 1. Outside of the family, Stephen is interviewing a lady that is haunted, and this monologue is fantastic. It's like this really spooky, self-contained ghost story that's beautiful and haunting and
sad, tragic,
sad and frightening. When she describes how her husband got in a car wreck and describes in detail how he died, hanging upside down with a broken arm and
blood pooling in his face.
But blood pooling in his face in the rain, and he's able to honk, but his arm is broken, so he's not able to do it consistently. And how when she was sleeping in their bed, that he appeared to her in that form with drips coming off of him onto her, like actual water. Yeah, and when he opened his mouth, there was a loud car horn, like deafening car horn that came from him. And so it doesn't show any of this. It's all just described, and you have this image in your head, and it is...
That's a really good point. Yeah, it is all just described. There, a lesser show would have showed it all,
right,
and then given you the full picture, and then given you a little jump scare at the end.
Right.
This is just a woman staring into a camera, describing it beat by beat, straight to you.
Right.
That's it. Just a story, and it's so effective because you have it all in your head.
Yeah. And so Stephen is there to research for a new book, possibly, and he also seems to be like a paranormal investigator.
Yes, he by virtue of the kind of stories he writes, he's basically had to adopt the science behind debunking these things. So, because he actually seems like he wants to prove to himself that the paranormal does exist.
Right.
It seems like he's very convinced it doesn't, but also there's a part of him that's like, this would make my childhood make sense. So.
Yeah, and he takes it from a rational perspective to where he's like, there's no such thing as a supernatural. There's just things that we can't explain yet. And so he's kind of using a very, scientific approach to it. And he reveals to this woman that he's never actually seen a ghost.
Right.
That all of those experiences in his books were other people's experiences.
Even down to his own house as a kid. Yeah. He never saw a ghost in there.
Yeah. So that's established. And then so he shows him through the course of the episode laying down in this bed and trying to have the experience of, this ghost appear to him. And then it's revealed that the roof is leaky.
Yeah.
And that there's a stop sign outside that was taken off. And so there's near misses and people honking at each other. So there's all like rational explanations of how she could have woken up from a dream and conjured this up for herself.
Yeah, and as he's telling her about it, she's becoming irate. It's clear that, why are you tearing apart this thing?
Yeah, I actually saw it.
Yeah, and why would I remember him in this most horrible, gruesome of ways? And he says, well, because it's better than not remembering him at all.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's true. And then she kind of realizes, oh shit, he's probably right. Like, it's all here. The roof was leaking when it was raining. It was a rainy night when he died. The stop sign outside their house got stolen, so there's constantly cars almost getting into fender benders, cars honking at each other, so there's the honk. And then, you saw your husband because that's what you gotta see him, because otherwise you don't get to see him.
Yeah. Throughout the episode, so I think we mentioned Stephen and Shirley. Nell, kind of the focus of some of this. She seems not to be super stable and a little bit of a wild card. And then we see Luke. We're introduced Luke barely as a drug addict, recovering drug addict.
Yes.
And shown sometimes in the past where he. No, wait. No, it was in the present, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we learned that he got his 90-day chip, but then when we actually meet him, he was stealing stuff to sell for drugs, probably.
Well, he had clearly relapsed because he was already shaking.
Yeah. And
he was needing another hit to get back off of that.
Right. So, and then the final... So we got Theodora, Shirley, Stephen. Yeah, so that's everyone. And we see the dad, too, in later times. And then it ends with Stephen going to his apartment, and Nell's standing there, and he's like, "Oh."
Well, before Nell, that's when we get to see him with his brother, who's trying to steal the iPad and then also a camera. And he's like, "Look, man, I tell you what. Here's $200 out of my own wallet. I do need the iPad back. You can take the camera, but like, you got to give me the iPad back.
Yeah.
I don't know how you found me, but." I take pity on you. And his brother's like, it's not what it seems. It's not what it seems. He's like, yeah, I hope so. Man, this is something that my family's had to deal with a lot. Like,
really?
Oh, yeah, man. Alcoholism on my dad's side is strong. And I assume other substance abuse as well. And, with addicts, it's real hard. You have to have this bottomless pit of compassion because, I mean, there's plenty of people who go their entire life as an addict and are constantly coming back and being like, hey, man, I got 10 days clean. And you're like, who could possibly give a shit about that? I've heard you say that literally 1,000 times.
Yeah.
I've got 30 days clean. I've got 6 months clean. I've got a year and a half clean. And you're just like, basically, they've let you down so many times. And I say let you down, but really they're just letting themselves down.
Right.
And it's a very selfish thing to internalize it, make it about you. But yeah, I mean, this show deals with it in a very realistic and thankfully a compassionate way with the two brothers who are,
Yeah, I really lucked out with our immediate family that we don't have anyone with substance issues. I know my extended family have had people that have died from alcoholism or, substance issues or, that stuff. And it's harrowing. I don't know how I would deal with that. Like, that sounds like just the worst. I mean, how do you set up like boundaries, in that circumstance, both internally for like, how are you going to emotionally cope with this? And also how are you going to like practically deal with this person that you probably can't really trust? Well,
yeah. I mean, so this is what Al-Anon and AA programs are for. You should, if you're listening and you have someone in your life who's an addict or who has substance issues, Al-Anon is for you. There are meetings near you. You can go to them and you can find out how to cope with it. And the answer is really, you do set boundaries. You set boundaries and enforce them, and according to your ability to help or not. And then the biggest thing is just realizing this isn't on you, because the addict is going to put it on you. The whole onus, the whole responsibility for everything. They are not responsible for anything in their own eyes. They're literally a machine that's made to get the substance.
Right.
That's what they've turned into. That's it. There's no responsibility or accountability, nothing. They're just a machine to get the drug. And you are standing in their way, and you're constantly tripping them up, and that's not true. That's what they want you to think, because that's the fastest way for them to get more junk.
Yeah.
And so it's just really on you to just be like, no, and this isn't about me. This is about you. Like, don't let them fool you into believing it is about you. It's not. It's about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do to change it. Nothing. You can be supportive to an extent, but keep those boundaries up. It's all on them. You can't do anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And the last thing that it sets up in this episode, that's going to be a specter that looms large, but barely is touched on in this episode, is the Red Door, or the Red Room. And after watching the show once, like, you realize, like, okay, this is kind of like one of the purposes of the show, is the explanation for this room.
Yeah, I can't recall what it was either, but
like I kind of it's been the perfect amount of time because I can barely remember kind of everything, but very vaguely. And so as it gets revealed, I'm going to be like, "Oh yeah, that's great."
Yeah, and I like this in this episode, how they play with the Red Room. You got the two little girls who get the skeleton key from the groundskeeper, and he's like, "Try this one. Maybe this will get you in there." And they try it, and it doesn't work. But I love the dialogue between the two girls, because the little girl of the two says to the older girl, she says, "What do you think's in there? Maybe it's a pony." And that's a little kid thought, is maybe it's a pony. And she's like, "No, this door's been locked for years and years.
If there's a pony in there, it's long dead."
Right. If there's a pony in there, it's dead for sure. And then the little girl comes back with, "Well, no, I saw a shadow move around in there before."
Right.
And it's like, oh shit. And then when they leave to go get another key, you see the shadow moving around. You're like, fuck, something's in that room.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. I love that spiral staircase that goes up like 3 stories, 2.5, 3 stories to get to it. I love that spiral staircase. If I could have a staircase like that in my house, I'd be living large, man.
This show really toes the line of spooky house syndrome.
Oh,
like, it's my own. If you're new to horror movie talk, this is my own coined phrase of the horror movies that make the family houses so spooky and dark and like green and evil at all times, even in the
super dark,
even in noon daylight. It's like, it looks like you live in a house that was abandoned by a hoarder, because it's scarier that way. And this kind of toes the line, but it's like the one case in where it makes sense, where this is a very old house. It's like a manor,
and it's totally decrepit. It's being fixed up,
right?
So in the past, it's being fixed up, and in the present, it has been intentionally left vacant to rot.
Right.
And the dad says that in this episode. He says, in the past, he's like, listen, he's talking to his lawyer, I want to hold on to the rights to this. I'm not going to sell it to anybody else. I'm not going to let anybody else have to deal with the onus of owning this horrible thing. And it's going to die with us. It's going to rot out there.
Yeah. So, yeah, it is a spooky house, but also it does feel like a real house.
It
like
does.
When it's there, like, it does feel like, it's not scary, spooky all the time. There's daytime moments, and there's times where the family's just living there,
Yeah.
So, that's nice.
I'm trying to, I think, is this based on a true story, The Hill House?
No, it's based on a Shirley Jackson novel called The Haunting of Hill House.
Oh.
It's
where is the real Hill House located? Barnes Hill House. Show map of Massachusetts. Let's see here. Brookfield Road, Spencer, Massachusetts. I don't know how
Is it based on a real story?
I don't know. Let's chase this Wikipedia article down a little bit here. Oh, the house in the Wikipedia article is quite large, but it is not nearly as mansion-esque as this one.
Yeah.
It's on the Register of Historical. That's probably not it. Anyways,
so really excited to watch this whole series again. I had convinced my wife to watch it with me, so we might have Aaron on some future episodes.
My wife!
I think she's going to love it.
Yeah, for those of you who are new to this show, Erin is... Well, she must be getting better at watching spooky things.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's like pulling teeth getting her to do it, but she's like, it's not impossible for her to do it, but she will close her eyes at certain ones.
What's the process you got to go through?
She was also sleeping through a lot of it when we were watching it, so that helps her. It's just like wearing someone down with like Chinese water torture.
Please. Really? Every time? Still?
Every time.
Still?
Every once in a while in a blue moon, she'll be interested. She'll be like,
yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, I want to see. Like, so the few instances were Ready or Not. She volunteered that she wanted to see that.
Yeah, that was a great one.
End of list. Okay. No, I think there's one or two other ones where she was kind of interested, but really comes down to, is there like a female focus? Is there some kind of like crossover feel,
or
is there
something
kind of
in this for
pop
me?
Culture kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's where she comes into it. But anyways, excited to revisit this. Hopefully we'll get all these episodes done in November to release.
Yeah, and if we don't, we'll get a decent chunk of them released in November, and then probably the rest in December.
Yeah. So thanks for listening and going on a journey with us through The Haunting of Hill House. Looking forward to it. If you like us, not if you don't like us, leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts and subscribe so you don't miss an episode or miss the regular episodes of Horror Movie Talk. Also, if you're a huge fan of Haunting of Hill House and you want to get someone else into it, share this podcast or this after show with them.
Yeah, if you'd like to support the show, like I said earlier, make sure to head on over to our Patreon. Also, you can use code HMT at checkout at either Shudder.com, that's SHUDDER.com, and from there, Shudder is the premier horror movie and show streaming service. So HMT at checkout will get you 30 days of free streaming on Shudder, and also HMT at checkout at manscaped.com will be a nice gift for either a husband or boyfriend who needs to keep their balls and body coiffed and looking good, or yourself if you got a nutsack on yourself, you can keep it all nice and trimmed up.
As always, just want to thank our friend and just absolute mensch, Dustin Goebel. He's a professional artist that does all the artwork for our regular episodes. He takes commissions from fans of his artwork, so contact him on Instagram at dgoebel00. That's at DGOEBEL00. Contact him, and he can do anything for you. If you want like a custom poster, he's check out his Instagram. You'll see what he can do, and you'll be like, I want that.
Yeah, or check out our Instagram, and you'll see mostly his artwork on there.
Right.
So he's just a gem. And
thanks to all our patrons. Like, we can't list them all here, but you make this all possible. You keep us motivated. And please, if you want to leave us a voicemail, call 682-253-4468. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. We love you. Bye.